You see, the darkness, it only came because we let the fathers, the monsters, we let them rule. But now, all we have to do is make a bad chant.
Whoa. I sure picked an interesting time to start focusing on politics on this podcast and YouTube channel, didn't I? I'll just say up top to listen to Kvasy on SoundCloud. That's Kvasy. Awesome electronic music that I love to write and read to, which I will talk more about later and play out the show with. He's a DJ and a computerman, and he and I are going to work together on something real cool in the near future to make a thing to prove how capitalism sucks. SoundCloud.com/KVASY.
Here's a snippet of one of Kvasy's tracks, Laughing in the Faces of Ghosts.
So I've been thinking about my sister's politics a lot recently, and the politics of people like her. I remember when she was a senior in high school and I was in 6th grade, or actually she'd have just graduated and I was in 7th grade, I believe, because it was the morning after the 2000 election. She went to a local college, so she lived at home for her first semester or two of college. Because of whatever weird awakening schedule was going on at the time, I guess I got up after her, but before my dad, which is crazy because he's a farmer and he gets up at 4:30 usually. But I got up that morning, the day after the 2000 election, presidential, and saw a handwritten note on the counter beside the coffee maker that said,
"Good morning, Daddy. Bush won."
Exclamation point and everything. This was apparently considered good news in our house at the time. That was pretty much right before I started paying attention to politics, maybe because my brain was too small to grasp much of anything before age 12. Still not doing great in that area, but I guess I probably would have said I was a Republican up to that point, just because my dad always said that was what he was. Though I do remember my 5th grade teacher mumbling about those damn Republicans under her breath, kind of a lot. And I really liked her, so maybe that's what, led me here to where I am today. Who knows? It was the first time I'd ever heard anyone say anything negative about Republicans, though, I'm fairly certain. I guess my sister was just a de facto Republican, too, in much that same way. It was the 90s. She was a Christian. Her dad was conservative. Makes sense. But she must have turned pretty liberal not too far into college, because I don't recall ever having conversations with her that would indicate she was anywhere to the right of a, fairly progressive liberal. She stayed pretty Christian. Pretty dang Christian, I'd say, as far as I know, her whole life, but she was always one of them liberal Christians. I had a professor at Young Harris who would always say that, liberal Christians. He was really Catholic, so he'd always talk about how you can't be a liberal Christian and such. I wrote a song based on a phrase I learned in that class that's related, actually. A quote from John Calvin, or Martin Luther, maybe? "Sin boldly. If you feel a sin a-coming, let her rip." That's track 2 on the K-Max first album. Welcome, everybody. Available at thekmax.bandcamp.com. THEKMACKS.bandcamp.com. Linked in the description, per always. That's the description of this podcast. Breadsheet. With me, Hoss Bossman. That's right. And I'm Hoss Bossman. This is Breadsheet. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Twitch at Hoss_Bossman. And if you're feeling generous, please consider supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/Hoss_Bossman, and or buying one of my real music albums at thekmacks.bandcamp.com, and or you can purchase the silly, funny, crazy theme music from this very show, including the original themes I've made for guests at hossbossman.bandcamp.com, no underscore in that, or you can just go to www.hoss.fun and spend all day doing Hoss things. This is a mini-sode of Breadsheet, and I thank you so kindly for joining me. It's a new year, a new day's a-dawnin'. A lot of shit is happening, so much, in fact, that I forgot to do my call-out for this episode. But maybe I should save the one Ronin for next week. Not as many people listen to the mini-sodes as the full interview episodes. So the one Ronin, I'll give you a proper shout out or call out next time. Now you're kind of getting 2 or like 1.5. Not as many people listen to the mini-sodes. That's a little peek behind the curtain when I peep the numbers on these. But that is a huge mistake, by the way. All you true sheetheads know that this is where the biscuits get buttered, so to speak. Y'all know what's up. So, big week. We had us an election down here in Georgia. The good guys, or better guys at least, the not insider trading guys, won. Or, sorry, that's sexist. Insider trading guy and gal. Good riddance to the Robosaurus Rex, Kelly Loeffler, and the Chicken King, Sonny Perdue's brother. Strike those nicknames. Robosaurus is objectively way cooler than Loeffler deserves, and Chicken King is a pretty coveted title down here in the poultry-rich Northeast Georgia mountains. I grew up on a chicken farm. Going to convert those chicken houses into 100% legal grow operations sometime in the future. Also, speaking of chickens, a chicken coop, a coup was attempted by the scariest group of dummies I've ever seen on the news. And that was insane. And I kid, and it's easy to not take it seriously, but in all seriousness, I wish all y'all in D.C. and all over these United Snakes some strong resolve. It's a very weird time. It seems like 5 people have died. I think maybe 6, actually, as I record this. And as I record this, we don't really know much about who they were, other than the MAGA protester who was shot. I believe we're not sure about the others as far as what they were doing there. But no matter what side of history they're on, I wish no harm upon anyone, and my heart goes out to their families and loved ones. That would suck if you were like concerned about this road that your mother is going down or whatever, and these conspiracies and stuff, and then they wind up getting hurt or even worse at something like what happened on Wednesday. So yeah, that whole coup attempt thing was legitimately unnerving, no matter how dumb the ding-dongs were doing the attempting. And yes, I do believe that was technically a coup attempt, despite coups seeming much scarier than the events at Capitol Hill were, at least in my mind. I believe the difference between a coup and like a revolution is that a revolution is about, radically changing the system, a change of ideas, if you will, to quote Bad Religion, whereas a coup is an attempt to install a head of state, which is definitely what that was. I won't dwell on this all-American event too much right now. Lots of great analysis from lots of lefty and liberal YouTubers is floating around right now, and, other people, especially Bo of the Fifth Column. Actually, I believe that's where I heard that distinction between a coup and a revolution. So go check out Bo of the... this should be a special coup edition of Hoss Recommends. First thing to recommend, we'll get back to Beau of the Fifth Column in a moment's time. Still don't have that Hoss News theme, so I'll roll this little taste of Hoss News in with this special edition of Hoss Recommends. First things first, got to plug my own content. I'll try to make that quick. I made what I believe is the best video essay I've made so far, a little fact check on some absurd claims made in a Kelly Loeffler campaign ad about Raphael Warnock. As you can imagine, we've been inundated with campaign ads down here in Georgia for the past couple months. I mean, I don't even have terrestrial TV or cable or anything. I was seeing these ads on YouTube, actually. And I was going to make this like just a thing about how weird and crazy and, kind of funny some of the ads were and, to debunk some of the lies and stuff. But I started doing that and just like wound up with over 4,000 words on just debunking one 30-second ad, which is like crazy, but that's how many lies were told and what it took to sort of explain the nuances of, because, some of it was lies and some of it was just like taking it out of context and some of it was like framing it differently. And some of it was like, that's actually not even a bad thing if you think about it. So yeah, go check that out. Had to work my tiny little butt off to get it out within a couple days of the election. But I'm real glad I did. Not that I think it did anything for it's only got, it's got like 400 views, something like that on the YouTubes as of right now. Got some new subscribers. People really seem to like it. So go give that a watch. I was a little concerned that it was too specific to the election, so it would be kind of irrelevant afterward. But since Reverend Warnock won, it'll be relevant as long as racist weirdos are telling lies about him, which unfortunately means it will always be relevant. For real though, I'm going to start thinking of these videos as ways of giving people I'm trying to expose a little bit of reality to online, a like ready-made thing that requires no reading and is pretty to look at. I'll just copy and paste the URL of the relevant, somewhat in-depth video I make that's intended to disabuse them of their dumb beliefs and ideas and wash my hands clean of the conversation. I guess I have to make a 20-minute video about every single lie conservatives make in that case, though. So that'll take the rest of my life, probably. Might have to hire an army of researchers and writers to ever have a chance of accomplishing that. Hey, if you want to come work for me on that project, give to my Patreon and share this podcast and watch my videos and share those and like and subscribe and do all the stuff that I always ask people to do. I know it's a lot of stuff sometimes, but do that stuff. And then eventually I'll make enough money that I can hire people and do more stuff. I got this new MIDI keyboard and it is pretty sweet. I got it for Christmas from my girlfriend's parents. Pretty cool, huh? So yeah, go to bit.ly/HossTube or just search HossTube for Hoss Bossman, Warnock, or whatever, and you'll find it. Thumbnail has the good reverend with a pup on the cover and my beautiful face. I have like 25 subreddits that I post new videos and podcasts to every time I release a new thing. It can literally like take all day to do that sometimes, and I really don't like it. And hey, maybe I can hire somebody to do that if you give them my Patreon. And I've finally started getting hated on by the gatekeepy hipster left, which is kind of interesting for that Warnock video. He and especially Ossoff are not nearly far left enough for my taste, but I'm not apologizing for that. We have to make the most of the world we have. Democrats are about to have both houses of Congress and the executive branch. That means they have no excuse for sitting on their asses, engaging in half measures, throwing us crumbs of watered down policy, taking filthy money, telling us to be okay with symbolic gestures. It's time the proletariat take over the Democratic Party. I think we can do it. Vote out these corporatists, have Stacey Abrams make a spreadsheet, even though she's not really the most progressive either. But hey, she did a good job in this last election. Got to hand it to her there. And it seems like somebody who can make a damn good spreadsheet. Just like tell me what to do to help figure this shit out. And, I'll do it. People need food and shelter and healthcare and stuff, but I don't really know how to do any of that stuff or get it to them. So, make a spreadsheet and tell me what I can do to help. What my no skills, me as an English teacher and musician and whatever the fuck I'm doing here, person. So as scary and weird as that coup attempt was, I'd say on balance, long term, it was a decent week, mainly because of that election. I mean, we won. That's good. All right, so this is a mini-sode, so I can be real, right? It's just me and you, sheepman. Yeesh. I don't like the sound of that, actually. Sheepman sounds like a euphemism for a white supremacist group or something. I'm going to recommend something kind of different here today. Only kind of, though. I've been watching Roland Martin's stuff on YouTube. He's like an establishment kind of lib, or used to be an like establishment journalist. He worked for CNN or MSNBC or something, made a couple of bad homophobic jokes 8 or 9 years ago. Not that that's okay or anything, but, you know, it was a while back, and they're not, there's kind of jokes people used to make all the time. It's like, dude, we don't do that anymore. Not that that makes any of it okay. It's just, you know, people change. People can get better. I strongly believe that. I'm a straight, cis, boring white man, but I've always been all about the LGBTQ plus. Okay, I'm virtue signaling now. Anyway, he seems like a real dude, this Roland Martin guy. Homophobic tweets aside, I don't know exactly what his politics are. I've basically only seen him, well, with Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff having one the other night, my butterbean, and I stumbled upon his stream on YouTube and saw a clip of Roland Martin and his panel, and I was really struck by what this guy, he's a doctor, Greg Carr, was saying. It seems like he's an Africana Studies professor at Howard University, also the Afro-American Studies Department chair at Howard. Anyhow, I clipped what he said about having a progressive with a pulpit like Warnock in the Senate. So actually, I have that clip, so I'll just play the audio of that here. This really, really resonated with me. I hadn't seen this guy before, but definitely very interested in his takes on this kind of stuff, and we'll be seeing if maybe I can get him as a guest on the show. Anyway, listen to this clip. So I thought this was very interesting coming from a black perspective that maybe I have trouble seeing from because I'm a white man.
We are in the beginning stages of white minority resistance. Glenn Beck, Obama hates white people. All the stuff from Fox News, all the things that they're saying coming out of there. I keep just warning people, you must prepare for this, because in the history of America, wherever there has been black success, it has been followed by white backlash.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Roland, we really don't have a roadmap for where we are right now. You're making something, and they've already started a little exit polling. You know, over half of the voters who voted in Georgia today, who responded in some of these exit polls, say that one of the things they didn't like was the way Trump handled the wake of the presidential election. The white nationalist party has presented over the last 4 years. It's almost Dickensian in a sense. It's almost like A Christmas Carol. They gave an image of the ghost of America, future America, and it scared the hell out of enough people to drive them to the polls. You couldn't have picked better opponents if you had drawn them up. Kelly Loeffler is a caricature, but make no mistake, Kelly Loeffler is gone. The white nationalist party, which is why they're going to have this fight today in DC this afternoon, they are angling to keep the white nationalist voters that you're talking about, but also expand and outreach to those soft white nationalists who won't say it out of their mouths. Remember that tonight, John Ossoff, voters for Ossoff are less than voters for Raphael Warnock. What does that tell us? Are there people who pulled the lever for Warnock that pull it for Purdue, or they didn't vote for? I mean, what is going on in the racial logic of this country? Because it is not a nation. There is no one culture. There's no one narrative. There's no one story in America. And I know people who push back. I'm saying, well, show it to me then, because I'm 55 years old, and for a good 30 of them, I've been teaching and reading and writing, and I want to see you show me, and they can't show me. But you know what you're talking about. I'll end with this. What you're speaking to and what we're seeing in Georgia, there is a possibility. See, Raphael Warnock, and you know, Brother Warnock, I'm gonna tell you, brother, what you might have an opportunity to do in Georgia, I don't see a precedent for that either. When is the last time there was a member of the federal legislature, House or Senate, who had a pulpit, and the reports are true that Raphael Warnock said he's going to continue to preach from the pulpit of Ebenezer. The last person I can think of is another alpha, Adam Clayton Powell, and he was in the house coming out of Abyssinian Baptist Church. Raphael Warnock could do more for the idea of reclaiming the notion of spiritual practice, particularly through Christianity, but Islam or any faith tradition, as servicing the poor, standing for the least of these. He could do more in the next 24 months to reimagine the question of spirituality and politics in this country than any elected politician I can think of. And that might just be enough to crack the code of building a different type of national polity, and perhaps for the first time in American history, being able to speak about the beginning of a culture that we could call American. But you're never going to reclaim those white nationalists that are too far gone. And in 2 years, and in 4 years, and from now on, they're going to run better candidates who won't be as openly racist as Trump, and who, when they come back for the rematch, won't say it out of their mouths out loud. We got about, I think Warnock could do, it's intriguing to me to think about the possibilities of what Warnock could do from that pulpit as he is in the federal legislature to make people rethink the notion of what it means to believe in something and then go out and do with your policy what you claim to want to do from your pulpit.
So I don't know much about Roland Martin, but I did subscribe to his channel because he apparently moved his operation down to Georgia to help get out the vote for Warnock and Ossoff. And that's pretty cool. I think it's important to support Black-owned independent media, too. I mean, I'm not like a huge identity politics guy generally, but the vast majority of these leftist commentators I watch online are white dudes, so spread it out a little bit. Some white ladies, not all of them, but definitely not a representative portion. And like I've said before, I think we can pursue a level of diversity and representation without compromising anything, as anti-affirmative action dirtbags suggest we'd have to. Basically, my cold, logical take is that the world has enough people in it in each conceivable demographic category that there are likely to be some quote-unquote best candidates in each of those, so you can use demographics as one filter for choosing people to do stuff, if that makes sense. That's my smart brain take. Tell me if I'm wrong at the website twitter.com. Anyhow, Dr. Carr's words I played a moment ago made me think about how everyone was making fun of Marianne Williamson while I was low-key like, I think we actually should bring more of that touchy-feely language into the rhetoric we use on the left. Everybody's like, you fucking weirdo hippie with your crystals and your orbs and stuff, but it's like, she's really smart and cool and super progressive, like good politics, and I like the way she talks about stuff in a beyond just a material and cold logical way. But it's not just like platitudes and stuff. Like, it's, you know, talks about real shit, but she kind of gets deep with it, and I think that's cool. Look, I've had many arguments with many conservatives and capitalists, and it's depressing how often it gets to the point of realizing, oh, you just don't really have much empathy for other people, do you? Like, I posted about indigenous issues on Facebook and had people push back, and, you know, eventually we wound up at,
well, they should have been better at killing the Europeans if they didn't want to all die. We won, they lost.
You know, just positively ghoulish shit where it's like, well, I don't really know what to say to you if you don't think it's bad to murder innocent people like that. So all I'm saying is that as much as I love Bernie, I don't think a political revolution is enough to get us where we want. Or maybe we can't accomplish a political revolution just on its own without some other prerequisites. If what we want is to build a fairer, more compassionate society that's better for everyone, we're going to need a fundamental shift in our values as well. And maybe a progressive with a pulpit, a spiritual person who can speak to deeper, more ineffable, abstract ideas of community and love and charity, compassion, all that squishy stuff. Maybe that's what we need, you know, like MLK or whatever. Our moral foundation is like totally rotten, and we as a society need to take a long, hard look in the mirror if we're ever going to change that. I don't know how we do it. Maybe that's the value of some of the less tangible things our increasingly materialistic society has valued less and less over time. Things we need to bring back, maybe. Maybe our spiritual void can be filled with, you know, art, music, a more robust yet nuanced interaction with the humanities. I don't know. No political revolution without spiritual evolution. That's the slogan, and I'd be surprised if that's like not already taken or if somebody, but if it's not, or you can do some version of that that'll be somewhat original, then give me money for it because I don't have a job. But let's get back to talking about my sister and her brand of Christianity. Like I said, I've pretty much known her to always be pretty progressive politically and socially. She's on the right side of pretty much all political issues I'm aware of her position on anyway. I remember when she explained why capitalism is good to me when I was a kid using the example of soap. It's like something like, once upon a time, soap was just soap, but it didn't really get you that clean. I remember that exact sentence, her saying that, but it didn't really get you that clean. Then capitalism made it so there was soap competition and soap got better and better. And now look how clean our soap is. I have no idea how old she was or how old I was when she told me that. It must have been like 15 and 9 respectively. Something like that. In any case, I don't think she's like a hardcore anarchist or anti-capitalist like I am, but I think like very progressive liberal is probably a good label for her. And she's very Christian. We don't talk about that stuff all that much, but I think she and my brother-in-law are raising my niece Christian, but I imagine they'd respect her beliefs and autonomy if she grows up and decides to believe something else. I'm sure they're raising her religious, and I think in their case, that's probably a good thing, or at least like I think she will benefit from that because their brand of Christianity focuses on things that I think are nice and that all people should focus on. Anywho, I've also noticed over the years that some family members and folks I grew up around are still pretty religious Christians, you know, seeing the way they post on Facebook and stuff, and yet they don't share any of the political views of conservative evangelicals and such. Like when people think about people who are Christian churchgoers, they probably think of like anti-choice, anti-gay marriage, but also like being just very conservative. Like for some reason, if you're an evangelical, it seems like you're more likely to like support the death penalty and throwing people in jail for drugs and stuff like that. So that's not the kind of Christian I'm talking about here. I've talked before about how I used to be an annoying atheist, and I still would say I'm both those things, but they're not as closely connected as they once were. I mean, just looking at the role Christianity, the good kind that's all about love and compassion and nonviolence and stuff, has played in progressive politics and modern history. Spirituality may be a more important element of the revolution than some of us secular humanist types might be comfortable with. I mean, two of the most popular leftist progressive YouTube personalities call their shows The Humanist Report and Secular Talk, both of which are good shows. I'm a big Humanist Report fan. I also like Secular Talk. Humanist Report, Mike Figueredo? Sorry, I don't know your last name. Or don't remember it at the moment. And Secular Talk, that's Kyle Kowalski. He's been on Joe Rogan a couple times. The other one, the Humanist Report's a little bit more my speed, but Secular Talk, maybe you're more likely to have heard of. I don't know. But yeah, those are, you know, very, I imagine, especially Secular Talk, I imagine those were like named when atheism was like edgier and more cool. Now it's kind of like, all right, everybody's an atheist now. Like when atheism was considered a like kind of progressive thing to be, or something characteristic a lot of progressives had. I would still say that a secular humanist government with the liberal ideals of free speech, equality under the law, religious freedom, and all that is the foundation of the values we need. But the other big integral idea of liberalism, that is free market capitalism, needs to be phased out, and quickly, as you would imagine, I would say. I mean, I'm a leftist, socialist, communist, anarchist, whatever you want to call it, because I believe all people deserve compassion, empathy, fairness, justice, and the chance at living a decent life. Capitalism incentivizes behaviors antithetical to those outcomes. I got into it with a like cold, logical type leftist when I posted my pro Warnock video on Reddit. He kept saying that trying to inspire people through abstract spiritual means to be empathetic and compassionate is tantamount to political snake oil, as he said. And I was just echoing this idea about the potential power of having a progressive politician speaking to the better angels of our nature, so to speak, and having the platform and power to actually influence public policy and try and make our world more like the one he claims to want from the pulpit, quote unquote. religion may not be for you or me, but it's a language a lot of people speak, and maybe it's time we make more room for the Cornel Wests, the Marianne Williamsons, although I don't think she's religious. She probably would call herself spiritual, but those types of folks, Cornel West, Marianne Williamson, Raphael Warnock, folks like that. Maybe we need to make more room for them in our movement and make sure they know that they're very welcome among leftists. But yeah, this Reddit dude I was unadvisedly arguing with, who's being very aggressive, and I know you're not supposed to do that, especially when you're a content creator. Hopefully it'll be unreasonable and impossible for me to respond to everybody. Right now, I kind of like being able to do that. If you want me to be healthier and make myself a rule where I don't respond to it, well, you don't want me to do that, do you? But this Reddit dude I was unadvisedly arguing with said, I'm a socialist because capitalism is fundamentally illogical. And I'm paraphrasing here. The fact that capitalism is fundamentally selfish and greedy is just a side benefit of getting rid of it, is what this person said in response to me saying, I'm a socialist because I care about other human beings and have compassion and empathy and stuff. I certainly think logic and reason have their place. I mean, I love logic, reason, research, science, all that academic stuff. And yes, I agree that capitalism is very irrational, but only if your goal is to provide for people's basic needs and build society based on the brotherhood of man or whatever. But capitalism is perfectly logical if you're selfish and greedy, and it incentivizes selfishness and greed. And I think that's an unsustainable feedback loop, but it's also just immoral in my view. Yes, I think that we can make that case without religion, but not until we completely revamp our education system and cultural and societal values to foster critical thinking and empathy and imagination. I'm a little biased towards those things, I guess, because I'm a disgraced English teacher, but they're good things that our education system very much does not emphasize at the moment. Okay, so that was a lot more on that than I was intending to say, whatever that was. I was just thinking about, having some brain thoughts. I thought, that's an interesting topic I'll write about sooner or later, but I just talked about it for a little while, so, maybe there's a clip in here that I can pop on the YouTube channel. So I recently read or listened to the audiobook of Chris Hedges' America, the Farewell Tour, his most recent book, I believe. Hedges has been recommended to me a lot over the years, and this was my first time reading or listening to anything more than an essay or excerpt of his. Highly recommend it, though it does get quite dark and explicit, so content warning there. Apparently, Hedges was in seminary before he became a journalist, studying to be a priest or whatever, then worked at the New York Times as a war correspondent until he was fired for speaking out against the Iraq War when the media's consensus was still positive on that. Never forget that the New York Times and Washington Post helped to perpetuate the lie of weapons of mass destruction. Anyway, Hedges engages in a lot of this rhetorical posture, or whatever you want to call it, about how the American empire has no moral compass, no allegiance to anything except wealth, power, and capital. And he kind of talks about how, the fact that, we're secular now, not necessarily saying, we need to get religion back. It's just that there's kind of a moral hole, some kind of void in secular society. Not that, societies before this were moral at all. Like religious societies, theocracies aren't very moral either, but, so, some kind of spiritual, some foundation of something might be good. And so this isn't and definitely shouldn't just be the domain of the Black church, though it seems that community has managed to keep their eye on the prize, so to speak, to keep the Christian values of charity and compassion and nonviolence at the forefront. I mean, the obvious example of a leftist/socialist whose worldview was deeply impacted by his religious beliefs was Martin Luther King Jr., of course. Yes, he was a socialist, despite what heavily filtered information you may have learned about MLK in school. Probably most of my people listening to this show already know that. He shifted his focus from the Black community to poor people in general after 1964. But, there's also the great Eugene Debs, an early 20th century socialist labor organizer who always framed his socialist beliefs as being based in his beliefs in Christ's teachings. Actually, Hedges includes one of Debs' court testimonies in full in America, the Farewell Tour. It's a beautiful, just like one of the most compelling arguments for socialism and leftists and labor politics I've ever heard. Maybe I'll read it here. I got this off of, I think, Marxist.org, but, it's obviously in the public domain. It's just a court statement, but okay. It's Eugene Debs on September 18th, 1918. Your Honor, years ago, I recognized my kinship with all living beings, and I made up my mind that I was not one bit better than the meanest on earth. I said then, and I say now, that while there is a lower class, I am in it, and while there is a criminal element, I am of it, and while there is a soul in prison, I am not free. I listened to all that was said in this court in support and justification of this prosecution, but my mind remains unchanged. I look upon the espionage law as a despotic enactment in flagrant conflict with the democratic principles and the spirit of free institutions. Your Honor, I have stated in this court that I am opposed to the social system in which we live, that I believe in a fundamental change, but if possible, by peaceable and orderly means. Standing here this morning, I recall my boyhood. At 14, I went to work in a railroad shop. At 16, I was firing a freight engine on a railroad. I remember all the hardships and privations of that earlier day, and from that time until now, my heart has been with the working class. I could have been in Congress long ago. I have preferred to go to prison. I am thinking this morning of the men in the mills and the factories, of the men in the mines and on the railroads. I am thinking of the women who, for a paltry wage, are compelled to work out their barren lives, of the little children who in this system are robbed of their childhood and in their tender years are seized in the remorseless grasp of mammon and forced into the industrial dungeons, there to feed the monster machines while they themselves are being starved and stunted, body and soul. I see them dwarfed and diseased and their little lives broken and blasted because in this high noon of Christian civilization, money is still so much more important than the flesh and blood of childhood. In very truth, gold is God today and rules with pitiless sway in the affairs of men. In this country, the most favored beneath the bending skies, we have vast areas of the richest and most fertile soil, material resources in inexhaustible abundance, the most marvelous productive machinery on earth, and millions of eager workers ready to apply their labor to that machinery to produce an abundance for every man, woman, and child. And if there are still vast numbers of our people who are the victims of poverty and whose lives are an unceasing struggle all the way from youth to old age, until at last death comes to their rescue and lulls these hapless victims to dreamless sleep, it is not the fault of the Almighty. It cannot be charged to nature, but it is due entirely to the outgrown social system in which we live that ought to be abolished not only in the interest of the toiling masses, but in the higher interest of all humanity. I believe, Your Honor, in common with all socialists, that this nation ought to own and control its own industries. I believe, as all socialists do, that all things that are jointly needed and used ought to be jointly owned. That industry, the basis of our social life, instead of being the private property of a few and operated for their enrichment, ought to be the common property of all, democratically administered in the interest of all. I am opposing a social order in which it is possible for one man who does absolutely nothing that is useful to amass a fortune of hundreds of millions of dollars, while millions of men and women who work all the days of their lives secure barely enough for a wretched existence. This order of things cannot always endure. I have registered my protest against it. I recognize the feebleness of my effort, but fortunately, I am not alone. There are multiplied thousands of others who, like myself, have come to realize that before we may truly enjoy the blessings of civilized life, we must reorganize society upon a mutual and cooperative basis. And to this end, we have organized a great economic and political movement that spreads over the face of all the earth. There are today upwards of 60 million socialists, loyal, devoted adherents to this cause, regardless of nationality, race, creed, color, or sex. They are all making common cause. They are spreading with tireless energy the propaganda of the new social order. They are waiting, watching, and working hopefully through all the hours of the day and the night. They are still in a minority, but they have learned how to be patient and to bide their time. They feel, they know, indeed, that the time is coming, in spite of all opposition, all persecution, when this emancipating gospel will spread among all the peoples, and when this minority will become the triumphant majority and, sweeping into power, inaugurate the greatest social and economic change in history. In that day we shall have the universal commonwealth, the harmonious cooperation of every nation with every other nation on earth. Your Honor, I ask no mercy and I plead for no immunity. I realize that finally the right must prevail. I never so clearly comprehended as now the struggle between the powers of greed and exploitation on the one hand, and upon the other the rising hosts of industrial freedom and social justice. I can see the dawn of the better day for humanity. The people are awakening. In due time they will and must come to their own. When the mariner, sailing over tropic seas, looks for relief from his weary watch, he turns his eyes toward the Southern Cross, burning luridly above the tempest-vexed ocean. As the midnight approaches, the Southern Cross begins to bend, the whirling worlds change their places, and with starry finger points the Almighty marks the passage of time upon the dial of the universe. And though no bell may beat the glad tidings, the lookout knows that the midnight is passing and that relief and rest are close at hand. Let the people everywhere take heart of hope, for the cross is bending, the midnight is passing, and the joy cometh with the morning. So that was Eugene Debs' statement to the court. I never realized that, or I didn't realize until just now reading this, that Raphael Warnock quoted the same Bible verse that at the end of his acceptance speech as Eugene Debs did in this statement to the court. The joy cometh with the morning. It was something like, we may weep for the night, and or very similar sentiments. Go check that out. That was a pretty good, it's like a 5-minute thing. I think there's like a Now This News video of it on there, but wasn't that a beautiful, just like explanation of like, I believe in this. This is, I believe that this is right and there's nothing you can do about it. And I don't really think you can argue that it's not the only right thing to do once you know about it. So yeah, that's interesting. Raphael Warnock and Eugene Debs, you know, maybe he is a radical Marxist. he's quoting a socialist as like code to all of us out here, like we're going to activate the cells. I'm kidding, of course.
Yeah, time to insert, baby.
Howdy folks, Hoss here with just a quick insertion. This is Future Hoss coming at you almost in real time. It's 1:57 a.m. and I'm releasing this full episode, or this full minisode, in 3 hours. I'm pouring my heart and soul into this. So, you know, the news cycle has been moving just a tiny bit faster than usual this week. And I recorded this a couple days ago, the main like brain thoughty portion of this thing, and you know, do a lot of editing on this show, so it's quite a thing. I'd been outlining this minisode around the election, and I'd pretty much planned most of it out by the time the coup was attempted last Wednesday. Still weird to say that. The inclusion of the Eugene Debs statement to the court thing may seem like an odd thing to bring up with an even friggin' dopier version of the beer hall putsch having just happened, seeing as Debs was tried for sedition at the time. Well, I definitely want to expound upon this topic, but again, it's real late, so I'll just give the short and curly here. Debs was deliberately and peacefully protesting the draft during World War I, and he spoke out knowing he was going to be arrested. So he was encouraging people to resist being drafted and sent to war. I think this quote from Debs sums up his position quite nicely. The working class have never yet had a voice in declaring war. If war is right, let it be declared by the people, you who have your lives to lose. I won't get into all the ways Debs' protest is different from the display of the poor souls who stormed the Capitol last week right now, but it is pretty interesting to juxtapose them, isn't it? Like, you know, one is this hopeful, inspiring, idealistic thing that, you know, draws upon our better angels and whatnot, but there's obviously very little to compare there beyond, like, the fact that they're both dissent. I mean, I guess it is all a matter of perspective, but I don't know. Martin Luther King was a dissenter, but, you know, Debs, you know, the people who really history remembers fondly and the people who seem to be successful are the ones who do it peacefully. So that's the wave of the future. So we will achieve our socialist, anarchist utopia through peaceful means. All right, thank you, folks, and back to Past Hoss.
Insurrectionists.
You know, that video with Raphael Warnock, I might do like, I think I might do more videos on him because it seems like people are kind of interested in him. He doesn't even endorse Medicare for all, which is like a huge problem for me. So, you know, maybe he will later, but, you know, he really had to double down on being like likable, which really kind of pisses me off in his ads because it's like, you know, just as a black man, a black preacher, just like pillar of the community, he has to wear sweaters and play with puppies and be non-threatening because America is racist as shit. Anyway, Warnock, Debs, maybe not as far apart as I was thinking though. Get some of that old time religion in, and I was comparing them on the fact that they're both religious, so that's kind of interesting. I drop a lot of Eugene Debs quotes on my Twitter, so follow me on there and on Instagram and Twitch at Hoss_Bossman, and support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Hoss_Bossman, or just make www.hoss.fun your homepage and check me out all the time there. This is a mini-sode, not an intro, so I'm allowed to say the social stuff more than once. New rule. God, I hate Bill Maher. Anyway, religion. Speaking of Bill Maher, yeah, I used to think that Bill Maher was like a smart brain because he wasn't religious, which it's like, dude, I'm not religious either. Am I a smart brain? Fuck no. I am not Bill Maher. Anyways, religion. I've always thought Jews had this whole making religion work with being a modern educated person thing figured out. Like, it's a cultural thing for a lot of Jewish people, which I think is good. You know, don't lose track of the good things about it, but, you know, maybe don't hold so fast to it so that it's like clouding your judgment about being a modern educated person. I'm tempted to try and start this as a thing though for my people, the WASPs, to call myself like culturally Christian despite not believing in any of the like supernatural elements of that belief system. I can't help but think those values have informed my current political views though, you know, Jesus teaching about like love thy neighbor and all that stuff. And it seems like many Christians of our generation have stuff to contribute to the leftist/progressive project. And, you know, we need to make space for them, like I said. Let me know if you have any suggestions for, like, guests who can talk about that sort of thing. Or if maybe you would like to come on and have a chat. Like, maybe we can do, like, a short thing, do, like, a rapid-fire mini-so where I do a bunch of 10-minute talks with spreadsheet listeners. Now, that would be fun. Let me know if y'all would be interested in doing something like that at the website, twitter.com. Maybe I'll have my sister on the show sometime. That'd be like a fun, you know, episode 50 thing to do or something like that. I've already emailed Dr. Greg Carr, the Howard University professor you heard earlier, and asked him to come on the show. And next episode is going to be my buddy Lloyd talking about all kinds of fun stuff. So look out for that and a bunch of other great guests. Wait a minute, wasn't this supposed to be a Hoss Recommends segment? Yes. Yes, it was. I'm sorry. Kind of let the tangent carry me away there. Okay, let me recommend music first. Been listening to Bad Religion's 2013 album True North a lot more lately. Thought it was kind of meh when it first came out, but now I'm really appreciating it more. And let me recommend my friend and sort of kind of bro and low, maybe I should cut that part out. My buddy Mark, he's Kvasy on the SoundCloud and such. Oh yeah, I already mentioned him earlier. Kvasy. He's a DJ or electronic music maker person. I'm a dumb idiot, so I don't actually know his last name, which is good because he probably doesn't want me putting it out there for the riffraff on the World Wide Web. He's genuinely good at making electronic music, though. You heard just a snippet of it earlier. Like, he actually knows stuff about it and doesn't just slap a bunch of samples together for a silly-sounding throwaway like I do. Like this. If you like lo-fi hip-hop stuff and just music with a lot of thought put into it, definitely check out his stuff on SoundCloud. I've made some kind of lo-fi hip-hop-ish stuff, but my stuff, I just like can't resist making it all silly and just putting too much shit going on and chaotic and stuff. Like his is very like tasteful and restrained and good. Highly recommend that. Like I said, I like to write and read to it. But definitely check out his stuff on SoundCloud. That's Kvasy. I guess I pronounce it Kvasy. soundcloud.com/kvasy, KVASY. Definitely gonna play you out of this episode or mini-sode of Breadsheet with one of his tracks, so stick around for that. Also, while you're on SoundCloud, getting your electronicism on, check out DJ Boring at soundcloud.com/DJ Boring Songs. He's the one with the Pikachu avatar, not the English dude who definitely stole DJ Boring from Lloyd. He came way after him. I see you, bruh. Oh, and Kvasy's musical DJ name is based on his last name, which is like long and Eastern European or something, and I can never remember what it is. I'm a terrible person for not really knowing it, actually, because he's like almost family, kind of, a couple connections removed. It's just one of those things where I just see it and my mind goes, nah, it's too long. Don't remember it. My brain like really sucks. I remember when my boy Max and I got an Out Come the Wolves, Rancid's 1996 classic album, a masterpiece of punk and pop music in my view. Hoss also recommends that, of course, but one of the singers / guitar players' name is Lars Frankendersken. Not really. It's Lars Fredriksson, but we were too lazy to read his whole name, and we called him Lars Frankendersken for... well, I mean, I guess we still do call him Lars Frankendersken. Anyway, Mark Kankendersken, otherwise known as Kvasy on SoundCloud, is going to help me build a computer for the Hoss Bossman YouTube channel to help illustrate how wasteful we are with consumer goods and how there's a much more logical way we should be producing stuff that's antithetical to the incentive structures of capitalism, but is necessary if we are to continue to live on this planet and use its resources as a species, Yeah, there's the Venus Project, the Zeitgeist movies talk about this a lot. The light bulb conspiracy, that's about planned obsolescence. That's very interesting. That's a topic I'm very interested in. I think it's like one of the main drawbacks of capitalism. And I would like to explore it more. So I'll definitely do some videos and more podcast interviews, some folks who know more about that stuff than my little brain does. But yeah, Zeitgeist, those movies are good. I've started rewatching those. They talk about that, and the Venus Project talk about having a resource-based economy, so that, we live on a planet with finite resources, so we should be basing our economy and our society around that. And speaking of destroying the planet, Raised by Wolves on HBO Max, one of my favorite things I've ever seen, for real. Like, go check it out. Don't doubt that you will be utterly captivated within moments. It's got this really cool aesthetic. It's Ridley Scott, which can be a little iffy, but it seems like the newer Alien movies, Prometheus and the other one, whatever it's called, are more concerned with androids and consciousness and questions of creation and mankind's destiny and stuff. And Ridley Scott kind of seems to shoehorn all those ideas into the Alien franchise because it's the only way he can get funding to make big, epic, expensive sci-fi stuff. At least that's kind of what seems like is going on to me. Well, that's Raised by Wolves. He didn't write it or create it, just produced it and directed the first couple episodes. Then it looks like his son, Luke Scott, took over and directed some, along with a couple other directors, Sergio Mimica Gazan and Alex Gabassi, and someone named James Howells. In light of recent events and learning who Josh Hawley is, some Trumpy congressperson, bag of literal turds who sucks, triggered me a bit when I saw that last name, Halls, but that's more differently. Anyway, I watched Raised by Wolves. You should watch it too. It deals with so many sci-fi themes I love, and I won't say anything else because that was how I saw it. Literally, all I knew was that it had an awesome, bleak 70s sci-fi aesthetic, and that was pretty much enough for me. I didn't even know Ridley Scott had anything to do with it until the credits of the first episode. So yeah, Raised by Wolves is great, and I'm going to have my buddy Stacy back on Breadsheet for a very special chat about it and other movies and stuff too. I'm going to start expanding out what I, do here on the show. Not just guests and me rambling like a crazy person, but, more do some discussion stuff. So that'll be great. In that spirit, I'll end this bit about Raised by Wolves with the review that Stacy sent me via text message after watching the first minute or so of the show. This is the most sci-fi thing I've ever seen. That's Raised by Wolves on HBO Max. Well, normally this is where I would say that we should get out of the Hoss Recommends Phantom Zone before the Earth swallows us up, but I think we're past that point. So from now until the next episode, I guess I'll be trapped here in the Hoss Recommends Phantom Zone, trying to find another way out. Okay, I've been recording for, oh god, this might be the longest minisode ever. It has been a while. I've got a lot of brain thoughts saved up. That is going to do it for today's episode of Breadsheet. Thank you so much for joining me for this cray ep on this cray planet during this cray time. Please rate and review this podcast. Share it with your pals on the social media and in the world. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch, where I plan to start doing more live streams, music tutorials, and stuff. Please support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Hoss_Bossman. Go buy the very first Breadsheet album, The Sounds of Breadsheet, at hossbossman.bandcamp.com. Check out all those links in the episode description or show notes or whatever. Or if you don't want to remember nothing, just, visit www.hoss.fun to find all the Hoss things. Oh yeah, the YouTube channel too. That's at bit.ly/HossTube. Check out that Raphael Warnock video to learn more about your new Georgia senator. Yay. And how campaign ads lie to you. And please subscribe to me there. Next thing I'm doing before any new podcast episodes or anything will be to drop a new video on that channel about money and politics. I keep saying I'm going to do that. It's been almost finished for a while. It's just that other stuff that's more timely keeps coming up. That's actually, that money and politics thing is going to be the very first proper episode of These United Snakes. I like naming stuff. As I said, playing you out with Kvasy, KVASY's music. Check out his stuff at soundcloud.com/KVASY. In fact, you're hearing some of it right now. I just realized I can layer some later.
The title of this one is Florida Sunrise.
Okay, I love you very much. Please come back soon. Be safe out there. Stay realistic but optimistic. Wear a mask. Distance socially, be nice to your countrymen, try to tell people what socialism actually is, be patient, be kind, and make the quantum fabric of space-time take care of your dad. Base. Mwah.
That was Kvasy with Florida Sunrise. Go to soundcloud.com/KVASY to hear more, and visit www.hoss.fun for all your Hoss needs. Much love.